Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario claim Pfizer is sending fewer doses than it promised in the first quarter. The federal government says that's not the case. Here's an explanation. Pfizer has committed to sending 4 million doses of its vaccine by the end of March. That was based on each vial containing 5 doses. But now Pfizer says 6 doses can be squeezed out of each vial, and it's requested Canada's permission to change the label. If Canada agrees, then Pfizer is still on track to deliver 4 million doses. If Canada doesn't, then Pfizer would have to send more vials to reach that target. And if they don't, Pfizer would be 500,000 doses short of its commitment, at least according to Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. Steve McKinnon is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Public Services and Procurement Minister. Mr. McKinnon joins us from Gatineau. Hi there, good to see you again. Thank you for making the time.
Good evening, Vashi.
A lot of confusion, Mr. McKinnon. Some provinces, it seems, are under the impression that Canada is going to receive or won't be receiving the promised number of doses. Why wasn't it you or the minister clearing that up in the press conference today, and instead Major General Fortin, who is kind of like the head bureaucrat here, but not the politician in charge?
Well, as you're aware, with these regular technical briefings, we do very transparently have our officials, and we, of course, at Public Services and Procurement include our officials in that, as well as the Public Health Agency and Major General Fortin, who is doing a very, very good job coordinating all of this. So those are designed, of course, to be technical briefings, but we're here to clear up any ambiguity.
Okay, let's get to that ambiguity. The 3 provinces that we outlined think that they're getting less because they were told, for example, that it's 3.5 million doses by the end of March. What can you tell us about that?
Well, as Major General Fortin did explain in a technical way today, that he regularly shares with the provinces and territories estimations. I think it's pretty clearly marked on those forms that those numbers are subject to change, and they often do change. And we certainly want to give provinces all of the information that we have and can do prior to the relevant weeks or the relevant dates, so that they can gear up. But one thing that's very clear, Vashi, which we've, I think, been consistent on right from the beginning, is that we've been reassured repeatedly by Pfizer that we'll be receiving the $4 million doses for which Canada has contracted and which we expect before the end of March. And then that number, of course, grows exponentially as we ramp up, as they ramp up their production, and as we ramp up through the year.
And just to be clear, I just want to put this in layman's terms for our audience. No matter what, whether Health Canada ends up saying it's okay to get 5 doses or it's okay to get 6 doses, no matter what, you're telling us Pfizer has said the contract will be honored. You will get 4 million doses by the end of March.
Pfizer has reassured us that repeatedly that we have that the 4 million doses that we have contracted for will be on their way to Canada by the end of March.
What happens if they don't meet their commitment?
Well, look, Vashi, I think it's what's important to realize here, and you and I are speaking more often, is that we are in the ramp-up phase. This is a very dynamic period. We have 2 vaccines approved in Canada. Others are approved elsewhere in the world, but we have 2 approved in Canada. Others are being examined. The companies that are supplying us with those 2 vaccines are ramping up their production in turn to be able to supply customers like Canada. We're all being very aggressive. Every country is expecting the same level of accountability that I think we're demonstrating here in terms of telling our citizens, reassuring citizens that these vaccines are on the way and that we'll be equipped to get them into arms as soon as they arrive on Canadian soil. That is a major undertaking. And as we continue to put that pressure on those companies, we will continue to get those vaccines, and that will continue to ramp up through the year. Will there be road bumps? Probably. But what I can say is people are working day and night, round the clock, whether it be on the procurement front, on the logistical front, like Major General Fortin and the Public Health Agency, the entire government, and I know all provinces as well, are engaged in this process, and we're going to continue to manage and navigate our way through this dynamic environment, and we're going to continue to ramp up that capability to get vaccines into Canadian arms as soon as is humanly possible.
I'm certainly, Mr. McKinnon, not disputing the level of engagement. I'm simply asking, if Pfizer does not meet its commitment, its contractual obligations, is there a penalty at the end of the first quarter?
Well, look, I don't know that it's useful to go into contract law for your viewers, but of course, we have contracted doses. These commitments and these contracts, of course, include force majeure clauses and things like that. But we are reassured that Pfizer, and they've been telling us repeatedly, 4 million doses by the end of March, and those are the doses we expect, and those are the doses that I think you'll find make their way to Canada.
I'll tell you why I'm questioning the reassurance from Pfizer. Initially, what they told your government was that it would be a 50% drop in supply over 4 weeks. Instead, it's translated to a 56% drop over 5 weeks. So they haven't always been straight with your government and in turn with Canadians about the supply that we're going to get. Are you worried at all that those discrepancies will persist beyond that 5-week period?
We, of course, every day seek reassurances and, in fact, try and expedite deliveries to Canada. Every day, the minister, our officials, people all throughout the government are in contact with vaccine suppliers. And the reassurances that we repeatedly receive are that we will get the contracted doses by the end of March. And that's, I think, as reassuring as we can possibly be, and we are reassured by that.
The last time we spoke, Mr. McKinnon, we were worried at the time about the possibility of blocks on exports from Europe. I know the Prime Minister yesterday said that he spoke with the President of the European Commission, who assured him that Canada would not be targeted by them. I don't think we have anything written down about an official exemption. We also don't know exactly what those controls are going to be until they're released, probably at some point tomorrow. Is there a plan B in the works, just in case? And I take the Prime Minister at his word that he's gotten those assurances, but is there a plan B in case, especially where the U.S. is concerned? Health Canada has approved 2 sites, one in Europe and one in Kalamazoo, Michigan, for the Pfizer vaccine. Have there been any conversations, for example, with the administration in the U.S. or with Pfizer about the U.S. facility and supplying vaccines here in Canada from that location?
What you've seen, Vashi, is that we have a diversified portfolio of vaccines, and within those companies, they, of course, have a diversified set of production options. I don't think it's particularly useful to go into those. The Prime Minister did seek and receive reassurances from the EU President with respect to any export controls that they may choose. They have, I think, pretty clearly indicated that Canada would not be the target, even if anyone was the target, but Canada would not be the target of any hypothetical export restrictions that they seek to impose. So I think that, again, you can be pretty, and your viewers can be pretty reassured by the work of Canada's diplomats, by the leadership of the Prime Minister and the Minister, and the work that we continue to do to keep those supply chains intact and open.
Respectfully, Mr. McKinnon, though we may be exempt from being targeted, it doesn't mean that extra controls won't slow the shipment of vaccines from Europe to Canada. Has there been a conversation about accessing vaccines from the United States instead?
There will. Look, I'm not going to get into these hypothetical discussions on problems that may or may not occur.
There have already been problems with Pfizer.
Well, I think we've, again, been very transparent about the temporary delays associated with their ramping up of production such that they are able to meet their commitments around the world, and including those that they've made to Canada. So indeed, we will continue to work on Plan A, and Plan A continues to be and is turning out to be a very good plan in terms of our vaccine procurement strategies. The fact that we have now 7 and 10 times the number of vaccines doses required for every Canadian. And good news again today about Novavax. Of course, they must, like all other vaccines, receive regulatory approval, but we've received some very encouraging clinical data news from Novavax today, and that I think should be very, very reassuring to Canadians. They are also in our prospective portfolio of vaccines, should they be judged safe and effective for Canadians.
Okay, Mr. McKinnon, I'll leave it there. Thank you for your time, as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vashi.
Steve McKinnon is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Procurement. Let's swing over to Saskatchewan to get reaction to the vaccine supply issues from the Premier of that province. Scott Moe joins me now from Regina. Hi, Premier Moe. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Vashi.
So I was just speaking with Steve McKinnon, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Procurement, who assured us explicitly that Pfizer has said 4 million doses are coming by the end of March. Your tweet earlier today alluded to otherwise. Why do you believe otherwise?
Because we were told otherwise here this morning. We were told we'd get about 3.5 million doses. And so, listen, there is this what appears to be an inconsistency of supply, inconsistency with understanding just how many doses are in a vial, and an inconsistency in the information that's flowing from the federal government, maybe even in fairness from Pfizer to the federal government to the provinces. And it makes it extremely challenging for our public health care systems, our public health to plan their vaccination distribution in Saskatchewan. And I'm sure it's equally as challenging across Canada. We have virtually all our vaccines in arms here in Saskatchewan. We're getting about 5.5 doses out of one of those vials. So we're not getting 6. However, we are attempting to. And so there's a real lack of consistency of information that is flowing, and it's becoming very problematic in this vaccination program that is so very important to all Canadians.
I just want to dig down, though, into the inconsistency, because it seemed once Major General Fortin explained today pretty clear. The reason that they were saying 3.5 million was because that was based on the assumption that Pfizer is making that Health Canada will approve a label change which will bring in 6 doses per vial versus 5 doses. That was explained to us pretty clearly. I would imagine it was explained to your government too. So why tweet something that would, kind of give cause for people to be worried if in fact that's the case? It's just about doses.
It wasn't explained to the provinces. That's the challenge, and that's the inconsistency in the flow of information, which is matching, unfortunately, the inconsistency in the flow of the vaccines that we're having. We haven't had vaccines for 2 weeks now from Pfizer into Saskatchewan, and now we're looking at potential challenges in procuring those vaccines if there should be some action by the European Union in the weeks ahead. And so, the flow of the vaccines is challenging because it is inconsistent. But the flow of the information needs to be cleaned up first. And so we were not made aware that there was going to be this change to six doses in each vial versus 5 doses in each vial. And I understand we're going to need some additional equipment if we're going to be able to get that 6th dose out of those vials. We don't have it here in Saskatchewan. Our understanding is that I think the federal government can find it and get it to the provinces, but we need to do so and do so very quickly so that we can get this vaccine effort underway. We've been stalled for 2 weeks. I would say in some ways unnecessarily. I look at my neighbors to the south. North Dakota has in excess of 10% of their folks had been vaccinated. You look at places around the world that are having uninterrupted supply of vaccines. It's very, very troubling. Our lack of access to vaccines as well. The lack of access to information is actually becoming even more troubling.
I just want to be clear, though, on the information front, because a few hours after you tweeted that, there was a technical briefing in which that information was made publicly available. You had no idea that was coming? No, we had no idea. That technical briefing did come later today, but the information that we received this morning was down 500,000 vaccines to Canada from Pfizer. That's very alarming, in particular, when we're coming off of not receiving any vaccines over the course of the last 2 weeks. But now you have an explanation from the federal government, from Major General Fortin. Doesn't it make sense to you now?
If we are able to have access to the proper syringes to actually get the 6th dose out of those vials. We haven't been able to do so yet. We're at 106% vaccination rate of the vials or of the doses that we have received in Saskatchewan. We're trying to use every drop of that vaccine that we can. We're only able to get about 5.5 doses out of those vials. So no, the information we still need to have some conversations and really tighten up the flow of information between, I guess, Pfizer and the federal government, and then ultimately the federal government and the provinces, because this is very, very challenging to put together the vaccination program that we have to. We have places in Saskatchewan, in the southern edge of our province, that haven't received any vaccines at all because we were rolling it out and expecting that strong, steady supply of vaccines that has been interrupted over the course of the last 2 weeks. Had we had better information at the time, we probably would have redistributed those vaccines in a little different manner. And so, that speaks to the challenges that all provinces are having with these breaks in supply and the lack of information that is coming late and sometimes not even accurate.
I mean, the breaks in supply, though, they're due to Pfizer, right? Like it's not as though the federal government is telling Pfizer to stop sending supply. Pfizer had made that decision to retool their plant. Obviously, there are questions for the federal government, as you know, I've directed to them about the contracts that they signed. But at the same time, it's not something that was within their control. Once they knew that the supply would be broken, that was transmitted to your government, right? It was transmitted to all provincial governments.
And I still question why that supply has been broken. I still question why we don't have access to a larger number of vaccines earlier in the process, like countries very near to us. I think the United States is up 7.5 or 8% of their folks have access to vaccines. You see other countries around the world that are now approaching 50% vaccination rate. The UK, of course, is ahead of us. There's countries like
Israel's
like
the only
Serbia.
one that's close to 50. It's at 30.
Right, and then we have the UK as well that has is far ahead in their vaccination program. Serbia, for example, is ahead of Canada. I think we ranked 20th was the latest CBC article that I had read in the nation, and I just think we need to do better than that. In fairness. Okay,
Premier, I'm out of time. Yes. I want to leave it there. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thanks so much, Vashi.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.